Author Drew Thomas Allen is back to challenge the Democrat and mainstream media's attempt to rewrite the Biden legacy on this episode of United Patriots Uprising with Gary Binford. I'm your host, Gary Binford. Thanks for joining us. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com. You can find the video version at YouTube, Rumble, Conservative Television of America, the God, Family, and Country Television Network, and the Rose Unplugged Media Network. Wherever you go to find it, please click the notification button, subscribe, leave a rating and a review, and make sure you tell your friends about the show. It never ends, does it, America? Doesn't matter the size of the mess the Democrats have us in, the disingenuous mainstream media always rides in to spin doctor it, no matter what it is or how bad it is. So now the Biden administration's dismal, disastrous, and dangerous failures never happened. Why? So Kamala Harris can have a clean slate. Are they kidding us? Sadly, once again, no, they aren't. But my guest isn't having it. He's chronicled Biden's actual legacy in a scathing book, calling hiding Joe Biden the worst president in American history. Ready to hear about it? And where do we go from here? Well, let's get into it. He's an author, the VP of Client Development at the prestigious Publius PR firm. And he's an in-demand political analyst who has appeared on TV stations such as Newsmax and on radio stations all across the country. He runs the PR campaigns for some of the most recognizable names in politics, is a widely published columnist, and host of the popular Drew Allen Show podcast on the Daily Clout and Patriot TV. I welcome back to the show the author of the book, America's Last Stand. Will you vote to save or destroy America in 2024? Mr. Drew Thomas Allen. How are you, Drew?
Hey, Gary. I mean, I'm good anytime I get a chance to talk to you, to be honest. I mean, I love it. And as I say to you, living out here in the communist state of California, when I get a chance to talk to somebody who's smart and who's loves this country, I'll do it.
I thank you for those kind words, and right back at you, because your podcast is growing great guns, and you bring the heat and you bring the truth. So, bro, has anything changed since we last talked, at least on the air back in December of 2023? Oh, yes, it has. It's gotten worse. You were shouting the alarm then about how bad it was. So what do you say now? I assume you're more adamant that 2024 is our last stand.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's everything Democrats say it is, but not for the reasons that they're talking about. And, since we last talked, of course, Kamala Harris took Joe Biden out there, shanked him in the back, threw him behind the dumpster, and, coronated herself, took the crown and put it on her head, and the media helped. And it's so amazing, because what it revealed, of course, is that this machine, because the question I have to ask, Gary, is who the heck is running the country? Joe Biden spent nearly 50% of his time anyway on vacation. We've known he wasn't running anything, but this guy's basically disappeared. Kamala Harris is out there sort of campaigning, but she's acting like, she is the incumbent, basically, because she was the VP of Joe Biden. And it's like, who's running the country? So we have a bunch of deep state bureaucrats that are unelected that are still running the show. So it goes to show it doesn't matter who is elected, especially on the Democrat side right now, because they're largely irrelevant. They're just puppets, and the puppet masters are behind the scenes. And so everything's pushing forward, despite the fact that Joe Biden dropped out, because obviously, the American people knew he was mentally incapacitated. And after that debate, the media could no longer hide it. And Kamala Harris now is in there, and she is basically running the same campaign that Joe Biden did, except for different reasons. I mean, they're doing their own basement campaign strategy with her. But the thing with Kamala Harris is she's, younger. She doesn't have dementia that we know of. So what's her excuse? Well, the reality is, Gary, Kamala Harris's biggest problem, it's not that she's a communist. It's not that she's lying about all her positions. It's not that she's unlikable. Her biggest impediment is herself and the fact that Kamala Harris happens to be a very stupid human being. She is one of the lowest IQ individuals in politics and in this country. She is a very stupid person trying to pretend to be mediocre at best, and she can't even do that.
I hear you. And, when I was listening to you, Drew, I was thinking, see, people have to understand she was a district attorney. She was Hamilton Berger to Perry Mason, and the reason I bring that up is she may have some competency in trying cases, but that has nothing to do with inflation, the economy, world peace, and when I say world peace, it can't happen, but I mean keeping the peace as best as possible with these world power rogue dictators, the border, everything that goes along with running a country that at least a senator that gets to vote or a governor that runs the state understands. She has no experience in any of it. And if Joe Biden's your mentor, you're really up the creek there, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Democrats have a problem right now because on the one hand, they want to have it both ways. They want to claim that, they want to distance her from Joe Biden's policies, right, that have hurt the country, while also trying to give her credit and make her seem like she's been doing something for the past nearly 4 years to make her worthy of the job. And I've heard Mark Cuban out there as that guy is such a disgrace. It's so humiliating for himself, talking out of both sides of his mouth. I mean, on the one hand, when it comes to her owning any responsibility for this administration, he'll say, well, she was just doing what the boss told her. But he gave her the task of immigration czar effectively, and it's not her fault. She was just fulfilling his policies. But look, it's really worked out great. The border's good now. I mean, it's just the efforts that these people are going through to lie about who she is, what she's done. I mean, it can't be done, frankly. So they have no choice but to try and lie their way out of previous lies.
I hear you, Joe. I told some of my friends when she got in, I said, she's so bad, because a lot of people hadn't heard her. I didn't need to hear her. All I know is when she ran in the Democratic Party primary, she had more money than everybody. And she was the favorite, and she dropped like a stone. She had 1%. She couldn't even get the black vote. She had 1%, and she dropped out before the thing even got started. That let you know she was not even appealing to Democrats. Okay, now they're stuck with her. Okay, and I remember in your book, one of the things you said, you ain't American if you can't figure out who to vote for between Trump and Biden. Can we say the same thing again? You ain't American if you can't figure out who to vote for between Trump and Harris. And if so, why aren't you?
Yeah. Well, look, Harris is Joe Biden. They're one and the same. And she has been in this administration. And Joe Biden's come out and said, look, I gave her all this responsibility and as my VP to handle the border, to handle this, to handle that. And no, I mean, their policy positions and what they are doing to this country, whether it comes to immigration, foreign policy, economics in particular, they are at odds with what it means to be an American. The idea that this administration and Harris have allowed 20 to 21 million illegals to come into this country, we have not seen an attack like that on this country. When it comes to economics, their policies aren't just rooted in socialism, but they go to the most radical extremes of socialism, which would be, of course, communism and even fascism. And socialism, of course, is the root of both of those. But socialism is a concept you need, a political form to implement it. So that's where communism or fascism comes into play. And Harris's father was a very well-known Marxist, And Kamala Harris is, of course, too. She talks about price controls. She talks about taxing unrealized gains, which is absolutely insane, taxing you on money that you don't even have that can change in a moment because it's in the stock market or it's in the value of your home, which, of course, is dictated day to day by changes in the market. I mean, this is a person that absolutely agrees with her colleagues that say that America is an inherently racist place and must be deconstructed. So, yeah, if you don't know whether or not to vote for Trump or Harris now, then no, you ain't American. You have nothing in common with this country, and you are supporting the destruction and annihilation of the greatest nation in the history of mankind.
Absolutely, indeed. And usually I like to wait till the end of the show and then tell the guests to make a passionate plea for everybody to why we have to save America by voting for Donald Trump. But I'm going to move that up because you mentioned the magic word, the C word, communist. And I want to know, how would you recommend people to deal with this next question? We have told them for a number of years now that the country was going under if. Now, I have friends that said Bill Clinton was the Antichrist. We didn't think we could survive Obama the second time. We were very concerned we could survive Joe Biden now. Now we're saying it again. If you don't vote for Donald Trump, we're going communist. What do you say to the people that said, well, you said Clinton, you said Obama, you said Biden, we're still here? I know you mean well, but America's America. America will never go under. And yeah, we're at the edge of the cliff, but we've been at the edge of the cliff before. We just don't go over. This time we will. Please explain to them why you believe we will. I believe we will. And how do you try and convince people this isn't wolf again?
Yeah, look, we haven't been crying wolf in the past with talking about the looming end of America with these Democrat trajectories, which are socialist policies and worse. But the indisputable problem now is the acceleration of those policies. So it's not that we weren't moving this direction. It's that we are about to hit a moment where there's no going back if Trump can't come in and reverse that. And when we're talking about the end of the United States of America, this isn't a climate change thing. We're not saying the waters are going to swallow us up and the continent won't be here anymore of North America. What we're talking about, I mean, you have to almost, Gary, define the United States of America and what it means to be an American if we're going to talk about the dissolution of America. We're already losing the cultural component of what it means to be an American. That which made us great was exceptionalism. It was not a reliance on government. It was a belief that we could, through our own hard work and self-determination, defy the odds and, become what other people would believe to not be possible, right? Whether it came to, the Wright brothers and flying and all these innovations in America. I mean, that is why America is so great. We've imported the A-team around the world who wanted to become American without welfare. So there's the cultural component that's being lost. So that's one thing that we're losing. There's the Constitution, which binds us together, right? And so as you've talked about with packing the Supreme Court, these different attacks on the First Amendment to free speech, the Second Amendment right to bear arms, all of these different things are attacks on our founding documents and the Constitution itself. You have an FBI that's been radicalized and turned into a enforcement mechanism of the deep state and of the Democrat Party. So all of these things are glaring signs that we can see in other civilizations and cultures, both in recent history and ancient history, that lead to the destruction and annihilation of a country. So no, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, and if you're a rational, discerning person who cares to look at the truth, that we are, facing an inflection point in history, and if Kamala Harris comes in there, it will be the end of the United States of America as we know it.
As we know it, you're right about that. Now, you mentioned Trump and you mentioned the inability of the Secret Service to protect him. And in your book, you talked about the insidious strategy behind Trump as a monstrous threat to democracy. You talked about it being a false narrative. And one of the things, Drew, I always talk about on the show, Antonio Gramsci's cultural Marxism, when we couldn't get when they couldn't get the Karl Marx revolution because our middle class wouldn't go forward and pick up a gun and fight and overturn the government, then they turned to cultural Marxism, where you change the mores, you change Western civilization by changing the culture and changing the language. And this is why I thought that part of your book was so huge, because when something is wrong, when somebody is wrong, what do you do with wrong? You debate wrong. Okay. But when something and they tell you it's evil, what can you do with evil? You can kill it. See? So Trump being a monstrous threat to democracy, not just using that term gives them the carte blanche for somebody to decide, well, what do you do with a threat to a nation? You eliminate the threat. So will you talk about this, and are you amazed that it's gone this far? And I'm sad to tell you it's going to continue.
Yeah, well, I mean, my first observation is that we've had now 2 failed assassination attempts against Trump, 0 against Joe Biden, 0 against Kamala Harris. And I don't wish for there to be assassination attempts on anyone. That's not my point. But my point is there's a very clear link about an ideology and a mental illness in this country that is prevalent, and people who are eager and able to receive this message from the Democrat Party. And certainly the demonization of Donald Trump, the dehumanization of Donald Trump and his supporters has led to violence against the right. And of course, like you talk about with propaganda and an assault on the truth, you have corrupt organizations like the FBI, which will continue to falsely claim that white supremacy is the greatest threat, that MAGA is the greatest threat. And meanwhile, it, of course, is the left and their violent rhetoric that is dangerous. I heard the Commerce Secretary under the Biden administration go on the air just recently after we've had 2 attempted assassinations, failed assassination attempts on Trump, talk about extinguishing Trump. We need to extinguish him. Rick Wilson, the co-founder of the Lincoln Project, of course, a year or 2 ago, said they need to put a bullet in Trump. And so the rhetoric isn't changing. It's not going down. It's become even more inflammatory. And this is what is so sickening to me as an American citizen. And it's generational. It's not going to end after this election. CNN just did a story, I think Anderson Cooper on Anderson Cooper's show, and I couldn't believe it, but they talked about kids of Democrat parents and kids of Republican parents. And the Democrat kids were like, it was overwhelming. Basically, the Democrat kids pretty much unanimously were saying that they wouldn't even go to a Trump supporter's house because, their parents had basically taught them this, how dangerous Trump was. And Republican kids, though, could care less. They said they didn't care about race or ethnicity. But this is the danger of the philosophy. People don't understand that the Democrat ideology is so sordid and corrupt. And it's not unique to the United States of America per se. I mean, the Democrat Party is here, but it has existed elsewhere in the past. And what they do is they prey on identity politics, of course, but the most insecure people in a country. And they present themselves as the savior, and they have to scapegoat someone else to get their support. That's, of course, what Hitler did. And they've done such a disservice by comparing Trump to Hitler all over that it's almost like hyperbole. But, whether it's Nazi Germany or Stalin or Lenin in Russia and the USSR, or, you can go back to Roman emperors. I mean, or Great Britain with kings. I mean, that's what we're talking about here in the United States of America. It is the abandonment of the American experiment. And what is unique about this country is our Constitution that says we the people are master and those in government are servant. Now, every society, civilization, empire before the United States of America believed the opposite, that their rights came from the king, they came from the emperor, they came from government. And we said, no. What does the Democrat Party claim? They claim that our rights come from them as well, so they can take them away. So we're just come full circle now. The United States of America is blessed beyond measure because of the brilliance of our founding fathers and, frankly, Christianity that was being preached at the pulpits. And all of that's under attack.
Right, because rights, you see, we were founded on Judeo-Christian values that rights come from God, because as Drew said, if government gives you rights, they can take them away. Tell the people about your podcast and what you do there.
Well, I try to do what the great Gary Binford does on his show. I mean, you're a great host and a great interviewer.
I appreciate that. I really.
Well, yeah. So I don't on my show. I don't really have guests. I go for about an hour and pummel the Democrats and the lies as best I can in my limited time. And talk about the different issues. So that's what I do on the Drew Allen Show. I've been doing it for a little while. And it's just, I think the real motivation for me, Gary, is to encourage other people. And it's not, other people need to actually be me and exceed where I am, because, I'm opposed to a quote unquote collectivism, but when it comes to saving the country, we really need to band together.
Right. Got to get together. I hear you. Drew, tell the people why they should get your book and make a passionate plea and letting them know what they can do to get involved in this election.
Well, look, I mean, this book has become something that I think is more important than I even intended it to be when I wrote it last year. America's Last Stand. Will you vote to save or destroy America in 2024? And of course, that was largely focused on making sure that Biden, was not reelected. But even in the book, I knew that there was a strong possibility that it would be another Democrat that replaced him. And I make an allowance for that in the book. But, this is the anti-propaganda book. I mean, there are people on the fence, independents out there, that desperately need to understand the stakes of this election, that do not yet understand those stakes. And they need to know the truth about all of these attacks on Donald Trump, whether it's threat to democracy, because the caricature they've created of Trump is not true at all. But what is true about Democrats, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and others out there, is very dangerous and very frightful. And they are, of course, that which they accuse Trump of being. And so this is one of those books that also captures and reminds people, chronicles the historic failures of the last nearly 4 years. So Democrats want to tell all these lies. I mean, this is the book that counters all that and gives you the facts and reminds you of everything, from the Chinese spy balloon, which people have forgotten, to the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. And so it's kind of a very important book for this election.
Hey, people, we need to get as much information to as many people as possible, because this is our last stand. Drew, I really appreciate you coming on. Please tell people how they can where they can get the book, and anything else you'd like to promote, and how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, well, just email Gary Binford. No, I'm just kidding. Flood his inbox. No, you can follow me at, I've got a Substack where people keep in touch with me, drewallen.substack.com. That's grown a lot. That's a great place. You can find my podcast there, The Drew Allen Show. You can also find it on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. And the book is available on Amazon.
Yeah, Drew, thanks for coming back. And people, Drew, you may not know, Drew and I contact each other. We go back and forth a lot because he works for the prestigious Publius PR firm run by President CEO AJ Rice. And whenever they pitch me a guest that I want, AJ sends Drew an email. Drew, get on it for Gary. And bam, Drew, I have to ask you. I'm thinking, okay, I'll catch on the tail. I'll be on the coattails when you have like Judge Pirro or Ben Carson or, the Charlie Kirk, all the big names. But you move me right up to the front. Why? Who am I?
Yeah, well, we got a rapport, Gary. I mean, for whatever, I think it's you, and I think that your audience gets it. What they get from you now. I mean, you're such a lovable, likable, and passionate person that's so honest and truthful and just authentic. And, part of what I do, of course, it's just, yes, it's a job, booking all these people on different radio and TV shows. But as somebody who's in the fight myself, there's an additional motivation and desire to save the country. And so you are as good as anybody out there, one of the best in my opinion. And so I'm always eager to have those people on your show, because you do a great job of shaping and allowing those people to get their message out there. And you're my brother.
Yeah, brother in Christ. And I really appreciate that. You, AJ, you've been a God bless to me, a tremendous blessing to the show, and continued success with your show, your book, and keep up the good fight. And don't let them grind you down.
Thanks, Gary. God bless you.
God bless you too. There you have it, Mr. Drew Thomas Allen. I want to thank Drew Thomas Allen for going back out and reviving America's Last Stand, because it is America's Last Stand. The book was written a year ago, but it's just as valid now. And I would think, having seen what we have seen over these last few months, people need to get this book, check it out, get it to your friends, because what Drew said a year ago, it's even more valid now. So Drew, thank you for what you do and for coming back, hanging out with me, and telling America why we have to get this done right here and right now, because there are only two choices: Constitution or communism. So Drew, keep up the good fight and don't let them grind you down. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find the video version at radioinfluence.com, YouTube, Rumble, Conservative Television of America, the God Family and Country TV Network, and the Rose Unplugged Media Network. And there is an audio version. The reason, because the first few years this podcast was audio only. So there are more than 180 high-profile guests who previously have been on the show, many several times, who had great things to say that were just as valid then as they are now. So we encourage you to go to the United Patriots Uprising with Gary Binford archive on radioinfluence.com, where you will hear outstanding guests, including Christina Bobb, A.F. Branco, and anybody that has, if you know who A.F. is, he is a cartoonist extraordinaire. Ben Carson, Clay Clark, Monica Crowley, Kira Davis, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, Jamie Glazoff, Pastor Jack Hibbs, Carrie Lake, Mike Loftus, Kevin McGarry, Josiah O'Neill, Judge Janine Pirro, Pierre Wilson, Will Witt, and Kenny Chu. Just some of the many outstanding guests you will hear. So we hope you'll go there and check that out. Well, that's it for now, everyone. So until the next time, this is your host, Gary Binford, saying God bless you. God bless your families. God bless America.